In the peaceful village of Itoro, Nala was known for her calm nature and quiet strength. She was the daughter of Zawadi, a well-respected midwife, and her father Kafele loved her more than anything. Her childhood was filled with warmth, her mother's soft hands, and her father's proud smile. But that warmth didn't last. When Nala was just 4 years old, her mother fell sick and died within weeks. Her world dimmed, and the silence that followed changed everything. Years passed. Kafele, though broken by loss, eventually remarried. His new wife, Malika, was a widow from another village. She came with kind words and a gracious smile, and the villagers welcomed her with open arms. At first, she seemed like the answer to Kafele's loneliness. But Nala, even as a child, felt something cold in the way Malika looked at her, like she didn't belong. Now, at 25, Nala had grown into a woman of quiet resilience. She carried her mother's softness in her eyes and her father's calm in her walk. But inside, she lived with the weight of years under Malika's roof, years that never felt like home. Malika had never accepted her. From the beginning, Nala was treated like an outsider in her own house. To Malika, Nala was a shadow of Zawadi, a constant reminder that she could never truly replace the first wife. Every glance, every word, every forced smile from Malika carried that hidden bitterness. She never said it out loud, but her actions screamed it. Nala was a burden, a leftover, a mistake that came with the marriage. And while the rest of the village saw Malika as a graceful woman who brought balance to Kafele's life, only Nala knew the truth. Behind closed doors, behind the carefully kept image, Malika had made it clear she didn't want Nala around. And though Nala had grown, built herself up, and learned to survive, she had always known that one day the truth of Malika's heart would come to light. Nala had grown into a quiet, strong woman, shaped by years of silent pain. But the poison in her life hadn't come all at once. It started slowly, almost invisibly. Malika, her stepmother, knew exactly how to wear a mask. She never raised her voice, never acted cruel in public. Instead, she wrapped her cruelty in smiles and sweet-sounding words. At first, she spoke in ways that seemed harmless. "She must learn respect," she'd say, or, "I only want to guide her." But behind those gentle words were sharp edges meant to hurt. Inside the house, things were different. Malika treated Nala not like family, but like a servant. She was made to clean every corner of the house, wash clothes, cook meals, and run every errand. If she took a moment to breathe or sat down too long, Malika would scold her, saying, "Hard work builds character." Even when Nala had chances to go out and attend village meetings or join women's groups that could help her build her life, Malika would stop her. "There's work to be done here," she'd say, always with a fake smile. Slowly, the world outside their home began to change too. Malika started planting seeds in people's minds, small lies, twisted stories. She'd speak to neighbors, always with a sad voice and concerned look. "She doesn't listen," she'd whisper. "I try to teach her, but she resists. So stubborn, so proud." These words spread through the village, like wind carries fire. Soon, people who once praised Nala began to look at her with doubt. Friends stopped calling. Strangers judged her with their eyes before she even spoke. Even worse, Malika started telling her father false stories. "She snapped at me again today," she'd say softly. "I'm only trying to help her grow." And Kafele, tired and unaware, believed every word. To him, Malika was being firm out of love. He didn't see the broken look in Nala's eyes. He didn't notice how quiet she had become, or how she moved like someone walking on glass. If Nala ever tried to explain, Malika would twist her words or cry and say, "I'm just trying to be a mother to her." Nala said nothing. She held her pain like a secret, burying it deep. Every kind word Malika spoke in public was another layer to the prison being built around her. And every time someone believed Malika's lies, a part of Nala faded. But she didn't scream. She didn't fight. Not because she was weak, but because she was tired. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of being blamed. Tired of trying to prove the truth when no one wanted to see it. Yet even in her silence, something inside her stayed alive. She began to write short notes, thoughts, memories, anything to remind herself that she still had a voice, even if no one else heard it, because she knew the truth. And one day, the truth would speak louder than any lie ever told. Nala's world had become small and cold. The house that once held laughter and stories now echoed with silence and control. Malika had tightened her grip, not with chains or shouting, but with quiet rules that felt heavier than iron. She began with simple bans. No more visits to the river. It was where Nala found peace, where she used to sit and feel the breeze on her face. But Malika said, "There's too much gossip down there." And just like that, her escape was taken. Her friends from the village who once knocked at her door, laughed with her in the shade of the mango trees, and braided her hair during warm evenings, disappeared one by one. Malika met them with sweet concern, her tone always soft, but her words always poisonous. "Nala isn't herself these days," she'd say. "She's withdrawn, too proud to listen." People believed her. Why wouldn't they? Malika's calm voice, her gentle face, her carefully chosen words, none of them hinted at cruelty. Nala, quiet and tired, looked like the very thing Malika described. Inside the house, things got worse. Food, which should have been shared freely, became something to fear. Malika began locking it away. Cabinets once open were now bolted. If Nala asked for more than a portion, she was met with accusations. "You've already taken too much," Malika would say, then turn to Kafale, or any nearby listener, and sigh. "I don't know where it goes. She eats and denies it. I'm only trying to keep balance." The hunger wasn't just in her stomach. It reached her bones, her spirit, her voice. Clothes that once helped her feel like herself were no longer hers to rely on. Malika would damage them in secret. Small tears in the side, missing buttons, seams ripped open just enough to embarrass her in front of others. Then, with feigned shock, she'd hold them up for others to see. "Look how she treats what she's given. So ungrateful, so careless." The whispers started soon after, and the looks from villagers followed. No one asked Nala her side of the story. Malika's lies were too neat, too believable. The weight of it all grew unbearable. Nala didn't argue. What was the point? Every word she tried to say was already spoken for her by someone else's tongue. Every expression she gave was read through someone else's story. She began to shrink within herself. Fewer words, less movement, no laughter. Her eyes lost their spark. Her back, once proud, curved inward. She lived in her own home like a visitor with no rights. But even in that hollow space, she held on to something real. Tucked beneath a loose floorboard in her room, hidden from every eye, was a journal. It was small, worn, and precious. At night, when the world was asleep and her heart was too full to carry alone, she would write, page after page. She poured out the things no one saw, the truth about the stolen food that never was, the friendships broken by lies, the clothes she didn't ruin, the voice she still had but no one heard. The journal became her place of freedom. It didn't question her. It didn't twist her words. It listened, and through it, she remembered who she was. Not the girl people whispered about, not the burden Malika claimed she was, but someone who still felt, still hoped, and still believed that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to rise. The house remained a cage. The silence remained heavy. But in the shadows of each cruel day, Nala's words waited like seeds in the dark, ready to bloom when the light finally found them. The village celebration should have been a time of joy, a time for dancing and laughter. But for Nala, it became the moment her life was shattered. The sound of the drum beats and the cheerful songs filled the air, but Nala felt trapped. As people gathered to celebrate the harvest, she stood off to the side, knowing the weight of Malika's eyes on her. Malika, with her graceful movements and sweet voice, seemed perfect in front of the crowd. But that night, she chose to humiliate Nala in the worst way possible. It started with a whispered accusation. Malika, her face twisted in feigned distress, stood in front of everyone and pointed at Nala. "She cursed me in the night," she said, her voice trembling with false fear. "She cast a spell, trying to destroy my peace." Gasps filled the air, and Nala froze, her heart pounding. The villagers stared at her, their faces filled with confusion and suspicion. She opened her mouth to deny the lie, but before she could say a word, Malika continued, her voice getting louder, and she pushed her little stepbrother. She's dangerous. She's no good for this family. Without warning, Malika slapped Nala across the face, the sound echoing through the crowd. Nala stumbled, the sting of the slap burning her skin, but it was the shock, the humiliation, that cut the deepest. The onlookers gasped, and the celebration that had once been filled with life now seemed hollow. The laughter stopped, the music faded, and all that was left was Nala, standing in front of the people she once called family, with the sting of her stepmother's lies in the air. Malika's words sank in deeper than any physical blow. No one spoke up. No one came to Nala's defense. In that moment, she became a pariah. The crowd turned away from her, their eyes filled with doubt and judgment. She had never cursed anyone, never hurt her stepbrother, but no one would listen to her. Malika had painted her as a troublemaker, a monster, and once that image was cast, there was no way to shake it off. From that night on, Nala was ostracized. Villagers who had once greeted her with smiles now crossed the street to avoid her. Her old friends, who had shared secrets and laughter, now ignored her in the marketplace. The whispers followed her everywhere. She became the talk of the village, but not in a way she ever wanted. Malika's lies had become the truth in everyone's eyes, and Nala was the villain in a story she hadn't even written. She walked through the village like a ghost, invisible and unwanted. No one made eye contact. No one offered a helping hand. Even when she passed by, the women who once smiled warmly now looked away, their faces hardening. Nala's heart grew heavy, and the loneliness became unbearable. She had never felt so small, so worthless. The public humiliation had broken something inside her, something she didn't know how to fix. But the worst part wasn't the isolation or the whispers. It was the realization that even her own father didn't believe her. Kafele, still blinded by his love for Malika, didn't question his wife's accusations. He never once asked Nala her side of the story. To him, Malika was always right, and Nala was always wrong. The world she had known, the love of her father, the trust of her community, had turned its back on her. As Nala stood there, surrounded by people who no longer cared, she realized something. The pain of the slap was nothing compared to the pain of being erased. The slap stung for a moment, but the silence that followed, the rejection, the lies, those would stay with her forever. In that moment, Nala's spirit was broken, and the woman who once stood with pride and hope became a shadow of herself, lost in a world that refused to see her truth. The night of the fire changed everything. It was quiet, the moonlight casting soft shadows over the village. When smoke began to rise from the back of the house, flames danced through the small storeroom where dried grains, old tools, and family belongings were kept. By the time the neighbors rushed in with water buckets and shouting voices, part of the storeroom was already destroyed. Malika was the first to scream. She fell to the ground, clutching her chest, her voice loud and trembling. "Nala did this," she cried. "She wants to destroy us. She wants to kill me." People gathered, eyes wide with panic and curiosity. Nala stood at the edge of the crowd, confused and stunned by the smoke and chaos. Before she could even understand what was happening, Malika pointed at her, her face twisted in a mask of fear and sorrow. She was angry. I've seen it in her eyes. She hates this home. She wants it all gone. Word spread fast, faster than the fire itself. Before the flames were even out, someone had run to inform the village elders. A meeting was called at once. Nala was dragged there like a criminal, dirt on her feet and confusion in her eyes. She kept trying to speak, to say she hadn't done anything, but no one listened. Malika played her part perfectly, sobbing, shaking, telling everyone how scared she was. "I've done everything for her," she wailed, "and this is how she repays me. She wants me dead. She wants the house to burn." The elders sat in a circle, their faces grave. They didn't ask Nala for her side. They didn't question how the fire started or where Malika was when it began. All they saw was a girl already marked by village gossip, already rumored to be disrespectful and dangerous. One by one, they nodded. Some murmured that they always felt something was off. Others said it was time to teach her a lesson. The punishment came quickly and without mercy. Nala was taken to the center of the village, her hands tied with rough rope. She was pushed to the ground as people watched in silence. Then came the beating. Sharp, cruel strikes, meant not only to hurt, but to humiliate. Each blow was a message. You are not one of us anymore. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. The pain was too deep for sound. When it was over, they didn't let her go. Instead, they tied her to a wooden post just outside the village square. She was left there through the night, her arms aching, her face bruised, her soul crushed. The stars watched silently above her, and the ground beneath her grew cold. People passed by, some stealing glances, others looking away, pretending not to see her at all. Inside the house, Malika slept peacefully. Her plan had worked. She had set the fire herself, late in the night when no one could see. She had made sure to scatter Nala's scarf near the ashes. She had rehearsed every tear, every word, and the village had believed it all. For Nala, tied to the post in the darkness, everything felt broken. Her heart, her trust, her place in the world. She didn't understand how truth could be so invisible, how lies could be so loud. The fire may have burned part of a room, but it had destroyed something much bigger, her last hope that justice would find her. All she had now was the silence of the night, the ache in her body, and the distant memory of who she used to be. The rain came without warning, falling in heavy drops that soaked the dry earth. Thunder rolled across the sky, and flashes of lightning lit up the village like sudden fire. But no one came out. No one came to check on Nala. She was still tied to the wooden post, her clothes drenched and clinging to her skin, her hair heavy with rain. Each drop felt like a cold slap against her body, but she didn't move, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stood there, silent, still, and slowly changing on the inside. Her body ached from the beating. Her wrists burned from the tight ropes. The cold bit into her bones, but it was the silence that hurt the most. The people she once loved, the ones she had grown up among, had watched her humiliation and said nothing. They had let it happen. No one had questioned Malika. No one had asked Nala if the story was true. In that moment, Nala realized that she was truly alone. She lowered her head, water dripping from her lashes, and whispered to herself, so softly the rain nearly swallowed her words, "One day, I won't be the one burning." That sentence came from somewhere deep, deeper than pain, deeper than sadness. It came from a fire that hadn't gone out when the storeroom burned. It came from a place Malika had tried to crush with every lie, every slap, every cruel word, but it was still there, burning quietly inside her, not with hate, but with strength. Something inside her shifted that night. The tears that had once fallen so easily dried up. The hope she used to carry in her chest hardened into something else, something sharper, more focused. She realized that waiting for someone to save her was no longer an option. No one was coming. No voice would rise in her defense. No hand would reach out to untie her, but she didn't need them. She would save herself. The rope still held her, but in her heart, she was already free. Her spirit, beaten and bruised, refused to stay down. She began to think not of escape, but of rebuilding, not of revenge, but of truth. She imagined the lies falling one by one. She pictured the look on Malika's face when the truth finally came to light, not through magic, not through anger, but through quiet, undeniable proof. As the rain poured harder, lightning lit up her face, and for a moment, her eyes didn't look tired, they looked determined. The woman tied to the post was no longer the same. Malika had tried to break her, but instead, she had awakened something stronger. By the time the sky began to lighten with the early signs of dawn, Nala wasn't shivering anymore. Her body was still cold, her muscles still aching, but her heart beat steady and strong. She was no longer the victim of Malika's cruelty. She was a woman who had been through fire and was still standing. That night didn't destroy her. It changed her. It shaped her into someone who could no longer be silenced, someone who would not accept lies as truth, someone who would rise, not in rage, but in clarity. Nala didn't need to shout. She didn't need to fight in the way Malika had. Her power would come from her truth, and the world would hear it soon enough. The breaking point wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. After that long, cold night tied to the post, something in Nala changed forever. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't try to fight back the way people expected. Instead, she went quiet, calm. She walked back into the house with her head down, her steps steady, and her lips sealed. Malika watched her closely, waiting for her to break, waiting for her to leave. But Nala didn't go. She stayed, and she obeyed. On the outside, she became what Malika always claimed she wasn't: obedient, silent, respectful. She cooked without being asked, cleaned the floors before sunrise, and never looked anyone in the eye. But behind that quiet face, something else was growing. A plan. Nala started to keep her journal more carefully, not just to write her pain, but to document everything: the days she was beaten, the lies Malika told, the bruises she covered with old cloth. Every small piece of truth, she wrote it down, not for herself, but for the day she would need it. She began to hide things. The torn clothes Malika had slashed and blamed her for, she folded and tucked them deep under the wooden floorboards. She kept the broken dishes that Malika had smashed in a rage and accused her of breaking. She pressed herbs to her bruises at night and traced their shape with charcoal on old cloth, marking the dates. She knew no one would believe just her words, but maybe they would believe what they could see. One day, while cleaning the storage room Malika rarely entered, Nala found something that made her hands freeze. Tucked inside an old woven basket beneath stacks of unused fabric was a folded letter. The paper was yellowed with age, but the writing was clear. It was addressed to her father, Kafele, from her mother, Zawadi. Nala's breath caught as she read it. The letter spoke of love, of fear, and of warning. Zawadi had written it when she was very ill, sensing she might not recover. In the letter, she begged Kafele to be careful if he ever chose to remarry. She warned him about a woman named Malika from another village, someone with a dark past, someone known for manipulating her way into homes, causing chaos, and leaving behind silence and sorrow. Zawadi had heard rumors about Malika even before she fell ill. She had written this letter in desperation, hoping Kafele would read it and protect Nala. But the letter had never reached him. Malika had hidden it. Nala's fingers shook as she folded the letter and pressed it against her chest. Her mother had tried to protect her, even from beyond the grave. Malika had known that truth, and she had buried it. The woman who pretended to weep in front of the village, who played the innocent victim, had known exactly what she was doing all along. But now Nala had the proof. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She tucked the letter into her journal, wrapped it in cloth, and buried it beneath the floor with her other evidence. Her plan wasn't to fight with fire or anger. Her revenge would come from truth. Slow, steady, undeniable. She began to pay closer attention to Malika's habits. The things she whispered to the neighbors, the small things she stole from the market but blamed on others, the way she treated her own son when no one was watching. Nala watched it all, quietly, carefully. Everyone thought Nala had been broken. Even Malika believed, but Nala was just waiting, building, preparing. One day she knew everything would come out. And when it did, no one would be able to ignore it. No one would be able to say they didn't know. Because Nala was no longer the silent victim. She was the quiet storm, gathering strength, one truth at a time. The chance came quietly, like all important things in Nala's life. One morning, a group of visitors arrived in the village, teachers and health workers from a nearby town. They had come to check on the children's health and speak to the women about basic education. Malika was all smiles, acting like a perfect wife and loving stepmother. She made tea, spoke sweetly, and kept Nala out of sight. But Nala had prepared for this moment for weeks. She had watched the calendar, overheard the chief's wife mention the visit, and waited. She tucked her bundle of evidence, her journal, the torn clothes, drawings of bruises, and most importantly, her mother's hidden letter, into a piece of folded cloth. When the visitors moved from house to house, Nala slipped away quietly and approached a woman named Ayo, a visiting teacher known for helping girls stay in school. Nala didn't say much. She didn't need to. She handed her the cloth bundle and whispered, "Please read this when you leave." Ayo looked at her with surprise, but nodded gently. Her eyes caught a glimpse of the faint bruises on Nala's wrist. and said nothing. But that small nod meant everything. 2 weeks passed. Malika remained her usual self, cruel in secret, kind in public. But something was different. The village chief received a letter. Then, without warning, a group of women arrived with a council member and a local officer. They were from the Women's Protection Council, people trained to investigate abuse and protect those suffering in silence. Malika was confused at first, then nervous. The council said they had received a report from a trusted teacher, supported by real evidence. They requested to see the storeroom, the sleeping areas, the kitchen, even Nala's journal. Malika tried to laugh it off, but her hands trembled. The mask she wore so confidently began to crack. The moment of truth was quiet, but powerful. As the council read the letter from Nala's mother aloud to the village elders, people gasped. Some women covered their mouths in shock. The hidden past of Malika, the same woman they had trusted, was now in full view. The bruises were matched with Nala's drawings, the torn clothes, the journal entries, the hidden letter. Nothing could be denied. Nala stood silently beside the council. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just waited, like she had always done. But this time, the village was watching differently. They weren't staring in judgment. They were seeing her, truly seeing her. For the first time, Malika had no word. Her lies had turned to dust in front of the truth. And for the first time, it was Nala's voice that mattered. The trial wasn't in a courtroom. It was in the open, before the people who had once turned their backs. And now, they saw everything. After the truth came out, the silence in the village of Itoro was heavier than ever before. People began to whisper, not about Nala this time, but about Malika, the woman they had once trusted, believed, even defended, had been living a life of lies. The council didn't stop at just what Nala had shared. They dug deeper. Letters were sent to Malika's old village, and what came back shocked everyone. In her previous home, Malika had done something eerily similar. She had married a kind man, just like Kafale, and gained access to his home and family. But there too, she had made life a nightmare for the daughter of the first wife. The girl had been silenced, shamed, and eventually sent away. The village elder from that place confirmed it all in writing. Malika's pattern of abuse wasn't new. It was something she had carried from one life to another. When this news reached Kafale, he broke. The man who had once stood proud, who had believed he was building a peaceful home after Zawadi's death, now sat on the ground with his head in his hands. He wept openly, not just for Nala, but for his blindness. He had let a snake into his home, thinking she was a healer. He had ignored the signs, brushed off Nala's pain, and allowed the woman he loved to be tortured right before his eyes. No one in the village looked at Malika the same. The mask she had worn so well for so long had finally fallen, and all that remained was a woman exposed. The council called a final meeting. With all the evidence laid out and witness letters read aloud, the elders made their decision. Malika was to be banished, not just for Nala, but for the harm she had caused before and the risk she posed to others. She was given no time to argue, no one to protect her. Even those who had once shared gossip with her, who had laughed at her jokes, now turned away when she walked by. As she left Itoro, no one followed. She walked alone, carrying nothing but the shame she had tried so hard to hide. Her cruelty, which she had once used to control others, had now become her own punishment. It kept her isolated, unwanted, and unloved. Her downfall was quiet, but complete, and for the first time, Malika tasted the life she had forced on others, lonely, bitter, and cold. After Malika's banishment, the teacher who had first listened to Nala didn't just leave the village and forget. She came back, not with questions, but with open arms. She offered Nala a place in her own home in the nearby town, a quiet place filled with books, safety, and something Nala had never truly known, peace. Nala left Itoro with nothing but her journal and a heart that was still healing. But she carried strength now too, and that strength began to grow. In the years that followed, Nala learned how to speak, not just with her voice, but with purpose. She studied, helped at the school, and slowly began to see what could happen when a single person believed in another. Her scars never vanished, but they no longer defined her. They became the roots of something far bigger. She never forgot Itoro, the soil of her pain, the village that turned its back when she cried, the place that once saw her as a curse. But when she returned years later, it wasn't with bitterness. It was with something more powerful, hope. Her return was simple, no big announcement, just a cart of books, some volunteers, and a sign she carried herself, House of Light. It was the name of the new school she opened on the very land where she once cried alone. A place for girls who were told to stay silent. A place where truth wasn't feared. A place she never had, but now could give to others. The villagers gathered, older now, some ashamed, others in awe. They saw Nala not as the broken girl they once ignored, but as a woman who had survived fire and returned with warmth. She stood before them, not to shame, but to teach. Her voice was calm, steady, filled with meaning. She didn't say much, just one final line. The words that stayed with everyone long after she walked back into the school. The fire you tried to burn me with became the warmth that saved others. And just like that, Nala became more than a survivor. She became a light that would never go out.